On May 20th, 1964, Viva Las Vegas, starring Elvis Presley and Ann-Margret, was released. The chemistry between these two classic stars was just unbelievable. The film was directed by George Sidney, and he took advantage of having the opportunity to film some of the most spectacular and beautiful people on the Hollywood scene. It's regarded by most people as Elvis Presley's best film, and I think this is truly because of the chemistry between he and Ann-Margret. It's definitely not from the script or anything but the musical quality of the film. The film in itself is pretty poor. The storyline is really flawed, but the musical numbers more than make up for it. These two stars are just magic together. The pairing of two of Hollywood's hottest film commodities in 1964 was sheer genius. The film is also really recognizable because of the theme song, which has through the years served as the unofficial anthem of the booming entertainment center of Las Vegas. While the movie is really not considered a critical masterpiece by any means, it's just a classic in that the presentation of its two energetic young musical stars just sets the screen on fire. Everything else in the film is secondary to the screen rapport between Elvis and Ann-Margret, with the camera angles accentuating the attractive physical features of both of these performers. It's difficult for the average viewer to focus on other aspects of the movie. The basic plot of the story is Lucky Jackson, played by Elvis, takes off to Vegas to participate in the Grand Prix race that's there and held every year. The problem is his race car, which is a Maserati, is in need of an engine in order to compete in the event. He ends up raising the necessary money to replace this engine, but he loses it when he's shoved into the pool by the hotel's swimming instructor, played by Ann-Margret. She plays Rusty Martin. Lucky has to try to figure out a way to get his money back, so he decides to go to work as a waiter in the hotel, and he also ends up entering the hotel's talent contest in hopes of winning a cash prize that would be enough to pay for his car's engine. Lucky continues to try to win the affections of Rusty, but his main competition comes from Count Elmo Mancini. Mancini ends up trying to win the affections of Rusty and to also win the Grand Prix. All being said and done, Rusty soon falls in love with Lucky. Now, this movie wasn't put together very well from the beginning. The director, George Sidney, said in the beginning they really didn't have a script or a commitment on where they were going with the thing. But they sat down and they wrote the script in about 11 days. And initially it wasn't going to feature Vegas as the primary city, but they decided to change it to that. And I guess the rest is history. Now, one other person that's a big name in Hollywood loves this film, and that's Steven Spielberg. You've got to wonder what he really likes about it, because it doesn't fit in to the category of films that he directs. It has to be the musical element in it. And I have to say, the musical arrangements are just excellent. You won't see more energy on the screen from any other stars in Hollywood. The film was made for about $1 million, and it ended up grossing $10 million, which is a massive amount of profit for that era. Now, the tabloids just got out of control after the shootings of the scenes in the film where Presley and Ann-Margret end up getting married. And they claimed that they had actually done that they had really tied the knot. The truth was they didn't wed, but they did begin an affair on the set of the movie. And Ann-Margret would later say that Elvis would send her flowers in the shape of a guitar anytime that she began a new Las Vegas engagement. These two were basically called soulmates. Now, during this time, the movie's really recognizable song, Viva Las Vegas, is the de facto theme song of Sin City. In the movie, when Presley performs the song, it's done as one long, unedited shot. It's the only time that that technique was used in any of the Presley movies. It's kind of interesting to note that one of the guitar players on the soundtrack was singer and actor Glenn Campbell. And another point of trivia is that actress Terry Garr appeared in the movie as a showgirl extra. And it's thought that she appeared as an extra in 9 of his films. She went on to star in Tootsie, Young Frankenstein, and Mr. Mom. Look closely for her. You'll be able to pick her out. She has on a white top that has a black trim to it. You'll notice her face and realize who it is. And there's another scene that's earlier in the movie showing some more dancers, and I think she appears in there too. I've never seen documentation of that, but it sure looks like the same actress. She's dressed in somewhat of a striped sweater. So next time you watch the film, take a keen eye and see if you can spot Terry Garr. The film's director, George Sidney, also directed other hit musicals like Bye Bye Birdie, which Ann-Margret starred in. And this director was crazy about Ann-Margret, almost to the point of being obsessed. He knew that she was a gorgeous lady and had gorgeous attributes, and he really tried to keep the camera trained on them. You can tell that this is going to be a fun movie when the first time Elvis meets Ann-Margret, he's up underneath a car, and you see Ann-Margret walk towards the vehicle, and all you can see are her gorgeous, shapely legs. You can tell you're in for a fun ride for the rest of the film. It's kind of funny that in Great Britain, Viva Las Vegas was sold as Love in Las Vegas. And the reason they did that is because there was another film that was called Viva Las Vegas that was already showing in British theaters. In the film's closing scene, the stars are married in the Little Church of the West, which is still around today, although it's actually been moved a couple of times. It's the oldest wedding chapel in Las Vegas. I've actually gone to a couple of weddings at this chapel, and it looks just as it did in the movie. Now, as we mentioned earlier, the director loved Ann-Margret, and it was thought that he was giving her preferred and favorable camera angles at the king's expense. Elvis Presley's manager, Colonel Parker, wouldn't allow this to happen. He was on the ball all the time when it came to Presley. He did everything he could to make Elvis Presley the biggest commodity in American culture. And that's still probably true to this day, even though he's been dead for years. But Colonel Parker ended up confronting the film's producers and told them that they needed to put their emphasis on Presley so that he would remain the movie's feature performer. The problem with that was that Presley had met his equal. She was the female version of Elvis Presley. They used numerous locations in Las Vegas to do the filming of the movie. Some of these included a parking lot at the Sahara Hotel, and this is where the cast stayed during the shoot. They also used Lake Mead Marina. They used the Frontier Hotel and the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, in their gym area. McCarran Airport was used. Flamingo's Pool was another area for the shots. And to top it off, the skeet shooting range was at the Tropicana. Can you imagine there being a skeet shooting range that close to McCarran Airport? Well, there truly was one in that day. Now, there was a song that they edited out of the film, and it was likely done to save time in the movie. That song was Today, Tomorrow, and Forever, and it was basically a clips package featuring all of their time that they spent together in the film. This duet showed most of what the audience had already seen. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Elvis and Ann-Margret started kind of sneaking around and having a scandalous time together. And this turned into a massive story for the tabloids. During this time, Elvis was engaged to Priscilla, who he would end up marrying 3 years later. All this stuff got picked up by the papers, and Priscilla just came unglued. Here she was sitting back in Memphis, terribly angry about the entire ordeal. So angry that she threw a vase at Elvis during a heated screaming match between the two. and she demanded that Ann-Margret should keep her butt in Sweden, where she belongs. Elvis was so concerned about the effect that this had on Priscilla and how she was reacting to it. She was broken and hurt by it. But Presley had come to the conclusion that he needed to send her back to Germany for a period of time until this kind of blew over. But here comes the colonel to the rescue, and he told him to mend fences with her and get this straightened out and keep his career on course. And Elvis always listened to the colonel and didn't question it at all. Elvis Presley and Ann-Margret split up soon after the filming was over, but they continued to communicate and to have a strong attraction for each other. This is probably one of the few women in Elvis's life that he really loved, and he was completely torn between her and Priscilla. In the wake of the film's success, both Elvis and Ann-Margret would regularly appear as headliners in various Las Vegas venues, and they were always among the biggest draws whenever they performed there. Take a look back at this great movie. You'll love the music in it and the amazing chemistry that you see when these two stars hit the big screen. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll continue to chase the classics.